Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to look at patterns. Do you need them? Where to get them? How to make them? And how to use them. We'll take a professionally produced pattern like this and turn it into a nice stiff card pattern we can use to draw around. Okay, so patterns. If you're just starting out and you don't intend to make a lot of things, do you need a pattern? Probably not. If you just intend making things for yourself, maybe one-offs, then a simple drawing with a few measurements is perfectly fine. You don't need a pattern to do that. But like a lot of leather crafters who want to make a few things and sell them, it's worth investing initially in the time to make a pattern. So you can get pattern books on Amazon. You can buy professionally produced patterns like our own, which you can then print out, and you know that all the lines are perfect, all the curves are perfect, all the measurements have been worked out for you. So all you have to do is cut it out, make a pattern, and you're good to go. So that's the next step. Let's head over to the overhead camera and we'll actually make a pattern. Okay, so here we are back at the workbench. So with patterns, there are basically two ways you can make a pattern. You can, if you're skilled enough, you can use a ruler and a pencil and actually draw a pattern. But in this modern day and age, most people will probably turn to their computer. So we use a professional package, as you can see here, to draw our patterns, and we'll assume that you are using a professional pattern when making your item. So as an example, this is the product I've chosen for this example because it's very simple and the pattern is very simple. This is a nice little folding card wallet. Very simple design. It's basically three pieces of leather, the back piece and two inner flaps. So that's what we're going to make a pattern for today. So we'll take a Geordie leather pattern. Again, I've chosen this because it's very simple, but all of our patterns have the same features. First of all, every pattern has the name of the item it's for. It gives you the scale, which we always use 1:1, which is 100% size. So again, each individual piece is clearly labelled. Often what happens is once you cut these out and they're on your desk, they can get mixed up and you can forget what each piece is for. So we label each piece so that it can be kept together in the same envelope. A very important feature, well, two things. One is that we produce these patterns both in A4 size for our European customers, but also in letter size paper for our American customers. So if you were to buy a pattern from us, you can choose either A4 or letter size. So every professional pattern should have what's called a test square. I'll zoom in on that so you can see exactly what I'm saying. When you print out the pattern, you measure the test square with a ruler and it should be exactly the size stated. In our case it's 10 millimeters. So if your printout isn't exactly that size, you need to tweak your printer settings until it comes out the right size. Generally, if you set your printer to print at actual size, which is 100%, it should print out perfectly fine. So once you have your printout, the next stage is to make this rather flimsy bit of paper into a nice stiff pattern. Now you can stick this to whatever you like. Personally, I like to use mounting board, which is the stiff cardboard used in the picture framing industry. You can get this from most stationers. It's very thick, nice rigid plastic cardboard. So what we're going to do is we're going to stick this onto here and then cut it out. So what I suggest we do roughly is just roughly cut out the parts of the pattern first. Don't be too bothered about being on the line at this stage. Just cut them out like so. So I like to use the back, so just As you can see, we've used this card for lots of patterns, so it's an odd shape, but that's quite normal. So find where you'd want to put your paper pattern, and then if you take a glue stick, I use a Pritt stick, but any sort of glue stick will do the job. So you just coat the pattern paper with that. Make sure you get the edges and spread it out enough like that, and stick that onto your bit of card and flatten it out. Make sure there's no bubbles or creases, and if we just do the same with the other part of this pattern. Now, one point to mention here, you'll notice that on the big piece it's main body times 1, so we just need to cut out one of those. On the smaller piece, it's inner flap times 2, which means once we cut this out, we'll need to cut out 2 of this pattern from the leather. So there's no need to cut 2 separate patterns. One pattern you just use twice. So the next stage is to carefully cut out this. Now, it's important to get this accurate because this pattern is going to be used repeatedly. If you make a mistake now, that mistake will be reflected in every single thing you use the pattern for. So use a ruler, and I suggest you cut out the straight lines first. Just use a nice sharp knife with a good blade. And like I say, do your straight lines first. Okay, so that's the straight lines done, so that just leaves us with the corners. Now there's 2 ways you can do this. You can use devices such as this. This is a metal circle guide which allows you to cut round corners, but you'll find that most leather workers just do it by hand. I don't suggest you try and cut it out in one section, but to take it out in pieces. I'll zoom in slightly so we can see what we're doing. So if you take off the bulk, make sure you hold your blade vertical, not slanting to one side but vertical. If you take out the bulk of the corner and then just take it in pieces, gradually working around the radius. And there you've got a nice clean corner. So let's do that again. Can be helpful to put a weight on top of this while you're cutting it out. It depends how good your eye to hand coordination is. But you can see, using this method, it leaves a very presentable cut corner. And let's do the final corner. So that's our first piece of pattern cut out, ready for use. So we'll just do the second piece of this two-part pattern. So all that's left to cut is this rather intricate curve. So what I suggest you do is first of all use a small blade for intricate curves. Avoid using a large blade like this because it tends to obscure the line of sight. Plus the small blade has a very fine tip which allows you to twist and turn the blade as you cut. So take it slow and just do a very light pass at first. Don't worry about going too deep. All you want to do is create a channel for the blade to follow on subsequent passes. Try and make the cutting action as fluid as you can, and then just go over again following that same channel, pressing slightly firmer this time. And then we should get to the next pass. But like I say, just take your time. If you make a mistake, just reprint it and make another one. It's not a big deal. It's only paper and card at this stage, it's not as expensive as leather. Okay, so there we have the final two pieces. So we have the main body and we have the inner flap. Now, like I say, it says ×2, but that just means cut 2 pieces of leather from this one template, this one pattern. So the next stage is to use our pattern, which I suggest you put into an envelope and label it so you don't lose it. So we use this pattern to actually cut some leather and make the blanks ready for this. Okay, I found a suitable piece of leather. This is veg tan leather, about 1.8mm thick. So we need to position our patterns to get the best out of the leather. So the first thing to take into consideration is that with this particular pattern, let's get out the original item, we'll see what I mean. This needs to fold, so ideally we need the grain of the leather to be running along the fold. So if we look at this leather, we can see there are various creases which indicate the grain of this particular piece of leather. If you're not sure, if you flex the leather in both directions, you'll find that it's more difficult to flex that way, but more easier to flex that way, which tells you that that is the grain of the leather. So let's position our template so that this part is running in line with the leather grain. So that looks like the obvious place is there. So we take a scratch awl and first of all check that there are no imperfections on the surface, and we use the scratch awl to draw around the template like so. This is where it's important to have a thick piece of card, because if you just use the paper, you'd find that your awl would slip under it as you're drawing around things, and that ruins your line. So this board we're using here is perfect for this application. So as you can see, hopefully on the camera, that's left a nice outline for us to cut around. So we'll do the same with the inner flaps. the grain doesn't matter on these, so we'll just try and fit them into this area here. So that's the first one, and unfortunately we can't get the second one in there. So we're going to have to come up here and do it a bit further up. And there we go, that's our piece of leather marked ready for cutting. Okay, that's us done. So if you'd like a copy of the pattern that's used during the tutorial, you'll need to first of all subscribe. So if you click the subscribe button and the bell icon, you'll be notified whenever we release a new video with a free pattern. So there's a link in the description which will tell you where to download the pattern, and it is free for the first 3 days, after which there'll be a small charge to download it. Until next time, thanks for watching.